Many people in Europe believe that the crisis in Ukraine would go down in history until Russia's multifaceted invasion of the country. Now that the nation is at war, a humanitarian catastrophe is developing. The 44 million people who live in Ukraine awoke on Thursday to a full-scale conflict following months of military buildup and brinkmanship on the Russian side of the border. According to the UN, fighting has broken out in several locations throughout the nation, including the capital city of Kyiv, and approximately 500,000 people have fled to nearby nations. Since last year, Russia has been encircling Ukraine with increased force, gathering tens of thousands of soldiers as well as supplies and artillery close to the border. Early this year, frantic diplomatic efforts were unsuccessful in preventing the worst-case situation. These troops are currently fighting Ukrainian forces for control of the nation. The worst security crisis in Europe since the Cold War has been brought on by the escalation of a long-running conflict between the two countries. The attack by Russia on the nation has also prompted a heated confrontation between Moscow and the West. What brought us here, then? Here's a breakdown of what we know, even though the situation on the ground is continuously changing. Russia invaded Ukraine in what way? On Thursday morning, several locations around Ukraine came under attack after Russian President Vladimir Putin announced the beginning of a special military operation and threatened a bloodbath unless Ukrainian forces laid down their weapons. After months of rumors regarding Moscow's intentions with the troops it had gathered in large numbers near the Ukrainian border, a decision was made. US and Ukrainian intelligence authorities have estimated that at least 150,000 Russian troops have surrounded the nation on three sides, resembling a sickle. Worries increased in late 2021 and early 2022 after satellite images showed new Russian troop tank, artillery, and equipment deployments in several areas, including close to eastern Ukraine, Crimea, and Belarus, where its forces were taking part in joint exercises with Moscow's closest international ally. According to the Ukrainian State Border Service, some of these soldiers started flooding across the border, entering Ukraine from both the north in Belarus and the south in Crimea. Explosions also occurred in other locations, including the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv. In the days that have followed, missile attacks and street fighting have erupted. Numerous males of military age who were instructed to remain in Ukraine have escaped westward toward Poland or Romania. As common Ukrainians and reservists banded together to defend their families and homes, Moscow's larger and significantly better equipped military has encountered resolute resistance across the nation. Two senior U.S. officials with direct information told CNN that opposition has been stiffer than expected and that Russia has had unexpected challenges equipping its men. Russia is losing more soldiers, tanks, and planes than anticipated on the battlefield. This is partly because Ukrainian air defenses have performed better than U.S. intelligence assessments from before the invasion had predicted. Putin's recognition of more land than just the regions ruled by pro-Russian rebels raised concerns about Russia's impending incursion into Ukraine. What created the conflict's environment? Until it decisively chose independence in a democratic referendum in 1991, Ukraine was a pillar of the Soviet Union. This turning point proved to be the end of the faltering superpower. Following the fall of the Soviet Union, NATO expanded eastward, absorbing most of the communist-affiliated countries in Eastern Europe. Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, three former Soviet Baltic states, joined NATO in 2004. It crossed a boundary for Russia when it announced 4 years later that it would one day offer membership to Ukraine. Invoking this perspective in a televised speech on Thursday, Putin claimed that Ukraine's desire to join the Western military alliance posed a grave threat to Russia, and that the thought of Ukraine joining NATO was a hostile act. Putin has long viewed NATO's growth as an existential threat. Putin has already highlighted his belief that Ukraine is a part of Russia on a cultural, linguistic, and political level in interviews and speeches. While some of the predominantly Russian-speaking population in the east of Ukraine shares this sentiment, a more nationalist Ukrainian-speaking population in the West has always favored closer ties to Europe. A president who was close to Russia was forced to resign in the early months of 2014 as a result of widespread demonstrations in the Ukrainian capital Kyiv known as Euromaidan. In retaliation, Russia annexed the Ukrainian peninsula of Crimea and instigated a separatist uprising in Ukraine's east that took over a portion of the Donbas region. The front line has scarcely changed since the two sides reached a ceasefire deal in 2015, but the two sides have not experienced a stable peace. According to the Ukrainian government, the conflict has resulted in close to 14,000 fatalities and 1.5 million internal displacements. Since then, for 8 years, Moscow has been charged with conducting hybrid warfare against Ukraine, inciting unrest through hacking, economic pressure, and propaganda. The State Department asserted at the beginning of February that Putin was planning a false flag operation to establish a pretext for an invasion as a result of the intensification of these methods in recent months. What is Putin seeking? Putin claimed that Russians and Ukrainians are one people in a lengthy essay he wrote in July 2021. He also said that the West had ruined Ukraine and pushed it out of its sphere of influence through a forced change of identity. When Putin announced his decision to recognize the Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics last Monday, while expressing skepticism about Ukraine's sovereignty, he did so in an emotional and anguished speech to the nation. But Ukrainians, who have in recent years sought closer ties with Western organizations like the European Union and NATO, have resisted the idea that they are merely the West's puppet. Opposition to Putin's attempts to reintegrate Ukraine into Russia has grown, as evidenced by a majority of Ukrainians now favoring joining the US-led transatlantic military alliance, according to several recent polls. Putin gave the US and NATO a list of security requirements in December. The assurance that Ukraine will never join NATO and that the alliance reduces its military presence in Eastern and Central Europe were foremost among them. The US and its allies have consistently claimed that these plans are impossible to implement. Putin made it clear that he wasn't eager to engage in protracted discussions on the issue. At his yearly press conference in the middle of last year, he declared, "It is you who must give us guarantees, and you must do it immediately, right now." Are missiles being deployed close to the US border? We are not, no. The country with the missiles that have arrived at our door and are already inside is the United States. In January, high-level negotiations between the West and Russia came to an end without any progress. The standoff forced European leaders to engage in a frenzy of shuttle diplomacy, trying to determine whether the Normandy format talks, a channel for negotiations between France, Germany, Russia, and Ukraine to end the conflict in eastern Ukraine, could offer a way to defuse the current crisis. Putin reiterated unproven allegations that Ukraine is committing genocide against Russian speakers in the Donbas region during a press conference with the new German Chancellor Olaf Scholz on February 16. He also called for an end to the conflict through the Minsk peace process, a coding language that was used as justification for annexing Crimea. Putin's prior response was direct and stated that the plan must be carried out whether Zelensky agrees with it or not. In a joint press conference with Emmanuel Macron of France, Putin added, "Like it or don't like it, it's your duty, my beauty." Zelensky, a former comedian and TV personality, easily won a 2019 election on pledges to put an end to the Donbas war, but not much has changed. Zelensky reacted in Russian to a query regarding Putin's direct and undiplomatic language by stating categorically, "We are not his." How has Ukraine reacted to this? Previously, President Zelensky downplayed the possibility of a full-scale conflict with Russia by pointing out that the threat has been around for a while and that Ukraine is ready for military action. Zelensky, however, delivered an emotional speech to the Ukrainian people on Thursday, declaring martial law in the nation as Russia attacked his nation. Today, Russia launched an invasion of Ukraine. Putin formally declared war on Ukraine and the entire democratic world. Zelensky stated in a video message that he wants to destroy my country, our country, everything we have been building and everything we are living for. People all around the country have been getting ready for the worst by putting together emergency kits for evacuation and scheduling weekend reservist training. Do you like it? Kindly give your valuable response in our comment section below, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more interesting and informative videos.